The Appalachians have a way of swallowing you whole, chewing you up in dense forests and spitting you out somewhere you don't recognize, stripped bare of certainty. I should know. My name's Liam, and barely a week ago, I thought a challenging solo hike through the lesser-trod paths of West Virginia's spine was just what I needed. A reset button. A way to walk off the lingering static of a year that had frayed me down to the wire's job loss, breakup, the usual delightful cocktail life serves up. Solitude in nature, that was the prescription. What I got instead was a chilling lesson in how thin the veil between the known world and something else can truly be. It didn't happen all at once. The mountains lull you first. For hours it was perfect. Sunlight, warm on my face, filtered through a cathedral canopy of ancient oaks and hemlocks. The air hummed with unseen life, the chirp of hidden birds, the rustle of squirrels in the undergrowth, the distant gurgle of a creek. My boots crunched satisfyingly on the leaf-strewn path, clearly marked, reassuringly solid beneath my feet. I consulted my map periodically, traced the contours with my finger, felt the smug satisfaction of a man confidently navigating his chosen course. The shift began subtly, easily dismissed. A coolness settling in the air that felt deeper than just the shade of the trees, carrying a dampness that clung unpleasantly to my skin. The vibrant greens of the forest seemed to mute, taking on a grayish, almost underwater hue. Then came the silence. Not a peaceful quiet, but a sudden, unnerving cessation of sound. The birds stopped singing. The squirrels ceased their chatter. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. All that remained was the echo of my own footsteps and the increasingly loud thud of my heart against my ribs. Unease, a small, cold seed, began to sprout in my gut. That's when the fog rolled in, not rising gently from the valleys, but creeping upwards, like spectral fingers grasping from unseen hollows. Wisps of pearly gray snaked between the tree trunks, blurring the edges of the world. At first, I wasn't worried. Mountain weather changes fast. But this fog, it felt different, thicker, heavier. It moved with an unnatural deliberation, swallowing the trail markers, erasing the path behind me as quickly as I advanced. Visibility plummeted. 10 feet, 5 feet. Soon, I could barely see the hand in front of my face. The world dissolved into an amorphous, swirling gray soup. Panic, sharp and metallic, rose in my throat. I stopped, forcing slow, deliberate breaths, fumbling for my compass. The needle, which had been steadfastly pointing north moments before, now spun erratically, uselessly. My map, damp with the fog's moisture, felt like a flimsy, irrelevant relic. The smug satisfaction of navigation evaporated, replaced by the cold, stark reality. I was lost, utterly, profoundly lost. Pushing onward felt like wading through unseen water. The fog muffled everything, creating a disorienting, claustrophobic bubble. My own breathing sounded harsh, intrusive. The ground became treacherous, roots snagged my ankles. Unseen dips threatened to send me sprawling. Trees loomed out of the gray like monstrous apparitions, their branches twisted into grasping claws, slick with moisture that wasn't just condensation. It felt strangely viscous, almost oily, and the feeling, the undeniable, skin-crawling sensation of being watched. Not the neutral awareness of woodland creatures. This was focused, intent, malignant, like dozens of unseen eyes were tracking my every stumbling step from just beyond the suffocating veil. Then came the whispers. At first, I dismissed them as the wind sighing through the pines, or maybe the distorted echo of my own movements. But they persisted, growing slightly clearer, yet never quite forming words. Sibilant, overlapping, like secrets being shared in a language I couldn't comprehend, always seeming to originate just over my shoulder, disappearing the moment I tried to turn towards them. Time lost all meaning. Hours could have passed, or mere minutes. Exhaustion settled deep in my bones, a leaden weight dragging me down. Fear had curdled into a dull, throbbing dread, just as despair began to whisper its own insidious suggestions. Sit down, rest, give up. A new scent cut through the damp, earthy smell of the fog. Wood smoke, faint but distinct. Hope, sharp and desperate, jolted through me. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant people, shelter, rescue. I pushed forward, stumbling towards the source of the smell, calling out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice was a thin, reedy thing, instantly swallowed by the oppressive gray. The shape materialized slowly, resolving from the mist like a developing photograph. Dark logs, slick with damp. A steeply pitched roof, sagging slightly under the weight of unseen years. Windows like vacant, black eyes. A thin tendril of gray smoke curled listlessly from a rough stone chimney. A cabin, ancient, isolated, huddled impossibly here, in the heart of this whispering, disorienting fog. It didn't look welcoming. It looked resigned, like something that had surrendered to the encroaching wilderness long ago. Yet it was structure, a sign of human or once human presence. My desperation outweighed my apprehension. I approached cautiously, boots sinking slightly into the soft, mossy ground around the cabin's small clearing. The feeling of being watched intensified tenfold here, as if the cabin itself held its breath, observing me. The door was rough planked timber, dark and warped, held together by rusted iron hinges. It was slightly ajar, a narrow slice of deeper darkness visible within. No light emanated from inside, despite the smoke from the chimney. Hesitation gripped me. Every horror movie trope screamed, "Don't go in," but the alternative, remaining lost in this whispering, sightless fog as night inevitably approached, felt infinitely worse. Taking one last, shaky breath, tasting the metallic tang of fear and fog on my tongue, I reached out a trembling hand and pushed the heavy door inward. The groan of the old wooden door echoed unnaturally, amplified by the heavy silence within the cabin. It swung inward sluggishly, revealing an interior steeped in shadows far deeper than the gray gloom outside. The smell hit me immediately, not just wood smoke, though that was present, but also something else. A thick, cloying odor, like damp wool, unwashed bodies, and something vaguely animalistic, musky and unpleasant. Mixed beneath it all was the lingering scent of old, cold ash. My phone's flashlight beam cut through the dimness, revealing a single, sparsely furnished room. Rough-hewn log walls, chinked with dried mud that looked centuries old. A dirt floor packed hard by time and use. In the center, a rough wooden table stood surrounded by mismatched, backless stools. Against the far wall, a massive stone fireplace yawned, its hearth cold and black, filled with pale, powdery ash. No fire burned, yet smoke curled from the chimney outside. My unease deepened. Cobwebs, thick as shrouds, draped the corners and the low, rough-beamed ceiling. Strange bundles of dried herbs and what looked disturbingly like small animal bones hung from the beams, twisting slightly in unseen drafts. The few pieces of furniture, a sagging cot in one corner, A rickety-looking cabinet against another wall were covered in layers of dust, suggesting long disuse. Yet the air felt occupied, watched. "Hello!" I called out again, my voice barely a whisper, absorbed instantly by the oppressive stillness. "I'm lost. Can you help me?" No answer. Only the faint, almost inaudible sigh of wind finding its way through cracks in the log walls. I took a hesitant step inside, the door groaning shut behind me with a soft thud that felt unnervingly final. My flashlight beam swept the room again, probing the corners, searching for any sign of life. Then I saw him. He was sitting on one of the low stools by the cold hearth, almost perfectly camouflaged in the deep shadows. So still, so silent, I hadn't registered him at first. He was old, impossibly old. His face a roadmap of deep-set wrinkles, skin like tanned leather stretched taut over sharp bones. A tangled mass of white hair and beard obscured much of his features, but his eyes, pale and cloudy, were fixed on me. He wore layers of rough, homespun-looking clothing, dark and stained, blending seamlessly with the gloom. He held a gnarled wooden staff across his lap, his bony fingers, stained dark at the knuckles, resting upon it. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me with that unnerving, unblinking stare. "Excuse me," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I got lost in the fog out there. My compass isn't working. Could you maybe point me towards the main trail? Or let me wait here until the fog lifts?" The old man remained silent, his cloudy eyes never leaving my face. The only movement was the almost imperceptible rise and fall of his chest beneath the layers of rough clothing. Was he deaf, mute, or simply unwilling to engage? I took another step closer, holding my hands up placatingly. "I don't mean any harm, just need some help." My flashlight beam caught something glinting on the rough table beside him. Small, polished stones, arranged in a complex, spiral pattern, and nestled amongst them a compass, modern, metallic, identical to my own. But its needle wasn't spinning erratically like mine had been, pointed steadfastly towards the cold, dark hearth. My blood ran cold. That wasn't north. That wasn't any cardinal direction relative to the outside world I knew. What the hell was going on here? The fog! The old man finally spoke, his voice a dry, rasping whisper, like dead leaves skittering across stone. It seemed to come from deep within his chest, unused for a long time. "It listens, listens," I repeated, bewildered. "Listens to what?" He shifted slightly on his stool, the movement slow, deliberate. His cloudy eyes seemed to bore into me. "To the lost," he rasped. "To the afraid. It calls them. Calls them where?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he slowly raised a bony finger, pointing towards the rickety cabinet against the far wall. The cabinet door was slightly ajar. My flashlight beam followed his gesture. The cabinet seemed to hold nothing but rough pottery and wooden bowls, coated in dust. But then, deeper within the shadows on the top shelf, I saw them. Small, crudely carved wooden figures. Dozens of them, each one different, yet disturbingly similar humanoid shapes, featureless faces, limbs frozen in postures of silent screams or desperate reaching. They looked like primitive worry dolls, infused with a palpable sense of dread. "Who are those?" I whispered, unable to look away. "The ones who answered," the old man rasped, his voice barely audible. "The ones the fog kept." A wave of nausea washed over me. Were those representations? Trophies? Memorials? Of people lost in these woods? Lost in this fog? My earlier feeling of being watched. The indistinct whispers carried on the mist. It wasn't just paranoia. It was real. The fog wasn't just a weather phenomenon. It was a predator. And this cabin, this ancient silent man, they were somehow part of it. The smoke from the chimney, the compass pointing towards the hearth. It wasn't a refuge. It was the lure, the heart of the trap, the ones the fog kept. The old man's words hung in the dead air, heavy and cold. My gaze snapped from the grotesque wooden figures back to him, his cloudy eyes still fixed on me with that unnerving placidity. Bile rose in my throat. These weren't just carvings. They were effigies, macabre representations of souls swallowed by the mist. How many hikers, campers, lost wanderers had stumbled into this hollow, drawn by the false promise of smoke from a chimney, only to end up as another voiceless figurine on a dusty shelf. You lure them here? I stammered, taking an involuntary step back towards the door. The packed earth floor felt suddenly unstable beneath my feet. The old man offered no denial. He merely shifted his grip on the gnarled staff resting across his lap. "The hollow provides," he rasped, his voice seeming to blend with the sighing drafts whispering through the cabin walls. "It offers stillness, an end to wandering. An end to wandering, or an end to being?" The distinction felt terrifyingly important. "I have to go," I said, my voice firmer now, fueled by a surge of adrenaline. "I need to get out of this fog." I turned towards the door, my hand reaching for the rough wooden handle. It wouldn't budge. I pulled harder, rattling it, but it felt solid, immovable, as if sealed by more than just warped wood. Panic tightened its icy grip around my chest. "The fog doesn't let go easily," the old man whispered from behind me. I spun around. He hadn't moved from his stool, yet his voice sounded closer, somehow inside my head. "It clings. It remembers." My eyes darted around the small cabin, searching desperately for another way out. The windows, dark, grimy rectangles, were boarded up from the inside, thick planks nailed crudely across the frames, blocking any potential escape or even a glimpse of the gray world beyond. There was only the front door, now inexplicably sealed, and the cold, dark fireplace. The fireplace. My flashlight beam shot towards it. It was massive, built of rough, dark stones, easily large enough to stand inside. But the chimney, smoke curled outside, yet the hearth was cold, filled only with pale ash. Where was the fire? Was the chimney just another illusion, another part of the lure, or did it lead somewhere else? As my light played over the hearth, it caught something within the thick layer of ash. Not wood embers, something small, metallic. I cautiously approached, my boots crunching softly on the dirt floor, my gaze flicking nervously back towards the unmoving old man. Kneeling by the hearth, I reached into the cold ash. My fingers closed around a small, tarnished object. A locket, heart-shaped, silver, intricately engraved, though the details were obscured by soot. I fumbled with the clasp. It sprang open. Inside, two tiny, faded photographs were nestled behind cracked glass. On one side, a young woman with kind eyes and dark, braided hair smiled out, a wildflower tucked behind her ear. On the other, a younger version of myself, maybe 10 years old, grinning gap-toothed during a family camping trip years ago. A trip to these very mountains. My breath hitched. How was this possible? I'd never seen this locket before. I didn't know the woman, yet there I was. Had I been here before? Lost? Had the fog almost kept me then? Memories? The old man rasped, his voice pulling me sharply from my shocked reverie. I looked up. He was still on his stool, but his head was now tilted at an unnatural angle, listening. It gathers echoes, fragments left behind. Then, from outside, a new sound pierced the oppressive silence. Faint at first, then growing louder, closer. A rhythmic tapping, tap, 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 against the sealed front door, followed by a soft, sibilant whisper, curling around the edges of the wood like smoke. The old man's cloudy eyes widened almost imperceptibly. A low groan rumbled deep in his chest. "It calls for another," he whispered, his gaze flicking towards the cabinet filled with wooden figures. "The hollow is hungry." The tapping grew more insistent. Tap, 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 tap. Whatever was outside wanted in. And I was trapped inside with the ancient gatekeeper of a hungry, whispering fog. The rhythmic tapping, tap, 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 was relentless, punctuated by those sibilant whispers that seemed to slither under the door like cold drafts. The sound grated on my nerves, each tap a physical blow against my already frayed sanity. The old man sat hunched on his stool, staff held tight across his knees, his cloudy eyes fixed on the door. He wasn't just observing anymore. His leathery face was taut with something resembling dread, his breathing shallow and quick. "What is that?" I whispered, still kneeling by the hearth, the tarnished locket clutched in my hand. "An invitation," the old man rasped, his voice barely audible over the insistent tapping. "The fog offers passage to those who listen too long." Passage? To what? To becoming another one of those grotesque wooden figures on the shelf? The tapping intensified, becoming frantic, desperate. It wasn't just tapping anymore. It sounded like dozens of sharp, pointed things. Fingernails? Claws? Scrabbling frantically against the wood, seeking purchase, seeking entry. The whispers overlapped, becoming a chaotic chorus of sibilant pleas and insidious promises. "Let us in, so cold. Join the stillness. We remember." I scrambled back from the hearth, pressing myself against the rough log wall, eyes darting between the rattling door and the unervingly still old man. "Can it get in?" He shook his head slowly, the movement almost imperceptible. "Not unless invited. Not unless the way is opened." His gaze flickered towards the hearth, towards the compass still pointing steadfastly towards the cold ashes. The lure. Suddenly the scrabbling stopped. The whispers died down. Silence descended once more, heavy and expectant. But it wasn't a reprieve. It felt like the calm before a storm, like the predator gathering itself before the pounce. Then a new sound began, not from the door, from inside the cabin. A soft, rhythmic creaking. Creak, crunk, creak, crunk, coming from the low-beamed ceiling directly above me. My flashlight beam shot upwards. The thick, dusty cobwebs swayed slightly. The bundles of herbs and bones twisted gently. But the sound wasn't just the house settling. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like something heavy, carefully shifting its weight on the floorboards above. "What's up there?" I breathed, my voice tight with fear. The old man didn't look up. His cloudy eyes remained fixed on the front door, but his knuckles were white where he gripped his staff. "Attic," he rasped, "where the echoes gather." Creak, Crunk, the sound moved slowly across the ceiling, heading towards the center of the room. It sounded like heavy, bare feet treading carefully on old, protesting wood. Was something else trapped in here with us? Or was this another aspect of the hollow's haunting? My light swept the ceiling frantically. Was there a trapdoor? An access panel? I saw nothing but rough beams and cobwebs. But the sound was undeniably above us, pacing slowly back and forth. Then, a single drop of something dark, thick, and viscous fell from between the beams, landing with a soft pat on the dirt floor just inches from my foot. It wasn't water. It was too dark, too thick. It smelled faintly metallic, coppery, like old blood mixed with the cabin's ever-present dampness. My light jerked back upwards. Following the path of the drop, I saw it. Wedged between two heavy ceiling beams, partially obscured by cobwebs and shadow, was a face. Pale, gaunt, eyes wide and staring, mouth stretched in a silent, agonized scream. It wasn't wood. It wasn't bone. It looked disturbingly, horribly real, yet desiccated, ancient. And from one of its vacant, staring eyes, another drop of that dark, viscous fluid welled up and fell, splattering near the first. The old man let out a low, guttural moan, finally looking up, his face contorted in what looked like horrified recognition. "Not now," he choked out. The creaking intensified, no longer cautious, but heavy, frantic. Crunch. Dust and splinters rained down. The beams above us groaned under a sudden, immense weight. The face wedged between them seemed to stretch, its silent scream widening impossibly. Whatever was upstairs, whatever echoes gathered there, was no longer content to just pace. It was trying to break through. The groaning beams above sounded like they were splintering, bowing under the immense, unseen weight. More dust and debris rained down, mingling with those slow, viscous drops weeping from the desiccated face trapped in the ceiling. The old man was scrambling backwards off his stool now, crab-walking across the dirt floor, his cloudy eyes wide with a terror that dwarfed my own. His staff lay forgotten by the hearth. "It knows you're here," he shrieked, his voice cracking, no longer a dry rasp but a high-pitched cry of pure panic. "New soul. It strengthens them, draws them out, strengthens them." My presence was making this worse. The ceiling above the center of the room bulged downwards ominously, the rough wooden planks cracking, separating. The face twisted, its silent scream contorting as the pressure increased. Whatever monstrosity lurked in the attic was forcing its way through. My flashlight beam, still shaking violently in my hand, swept the room again, searching for anything. A weapon, an escape route. The boarded windows were impenetrable. The front door remained stubbornly sealed. The only other feature was the massive stone fireplace, cold and dark. The fireplace, the compass pointed towards it. Smoke curled outside, but no fire burned within. Where did that smoke really come from? And where did the chimney lead? Crack! A large section of the ceiling directly over the central table gave way, not revealing an attic space, but releasing a cascade of something else. Not wood or plaster. Bones. Hundreds upon hundreds of small, brittle bones, animal bones, bird bones, perhaps even human bones poured down onto the table and the dirt floor, piling up in a grotesque, clicking, sliding heap. Mixed amongst them were clumps of matted hair, shreds of dark fabric, and more of those crude, screaming wooden figures I'd seen in the cabinet. The hollow's keepsakes, its victims, From the gaping hole in the ceiling, something began to descend. Not the full creature from the attic, but appendages. Long, impossibly thin limbs, covered in the same pale, desiccated skin as the face, ending in hooked, skeletal fingers, lowered themselves slowly into the room like grotesque spiders testing their webs. They twitched, exploring the air, seeming to smell or sense rather than see. The old man whimpered, huddled against the far wall near the cabinet of figures, making himself as small as possible. The descending limbs ignored him, their slow, deliberate movement turning, focusing towards me. Run. Hide. Fight. Useless. My flashlight beam felt pathetic against the encroaching horror. Then my light caught the inside of the fireplace again. Deep within the cold hearth, far back where the chimney should have begun its ascent, wasn't just soot-stained stone. There was an opening, a low, arched void, barely visible in the shadows, darker even than the surrounding blackness. Was it the base of the chimney flue, or something else entirely? A crawl space? A tunnel? Passage, the journal entry had said, leads down. Could this be it? The skeletal limbs were closer now, only feet away, twitching, reaching. The smell emanating from them was foul, a concentrated version of the cabin's inherent decay. I could hear soft, wet clicking sounds accompanying their movements. No choice. Scrambling on all fours, I lunged towards the fireplace, diving headfirst into the cold, powdery ash. The opening was low, barely high enough to crawl through, but it was definitely a passage, leading back into darkness. Ash filled my nose and mouth, choking me. Behind me, I heard a skittering sound as the limbs reached the floor, followed by the old man's renewed, terrified screams. Ignoring him, ignoring the horror, I pulled myself forward into the pitch-black opening, crawling frantically away from the main room, away from the descending horror, into the unknown depths beneath the cabin. The passage immediately began to slope downwards, the rough stones scraping against my hands and knees. The air grew colder, damper, the smell of earth intensifying, overriding even the stench of decay from the cabin above. I was heading down into the foundations of this cursed place, with the old man's screams echoing behind me before being abruptly cut off. The rough stone passage scraped my clothes, my skin, as I crawled frantically downward into the suffocating blackness. The old man's abruptly silenced scream echoed in my mind, a grim punctuation mark to whatever fate had befallen him. Ash clogged my throat, making each breath a ragged, painful gasp. My phone's flashlight, still clutched desperately in my hand, barely penetrated the absolute dark, illuminating only a few feet of the narrow, descending tunnel ahead. It wasn't a chimney flue. The air wasn't filled with soot, just cold, damp earth and the unsettlingly metallic tang I'd first noticed outside the manor. The passage twisted and turned, sloping ever downward, feeling less like a man-made structure and more like a natural burrow, or perhaps the gullet of some colossal subterranean beast. Water trickled down the walls, slicking the stone, making the descent treacherous. Several times my hands slipped, sending me sliding uncontrollably for short, terrifying distances before I could regain purchase. How deep was I going? Minutes passed in blind, crawling panic. The sounds from the cabin above faded completely, replaced by the trickle of water, the scrape of my own movements, and a low, almost subliminal hum that seemed to emanate from the very stone around me. It wasn't mechanical, more like a deep, resonant vibration, felt more than heard. Suddenly, the downward slope leveled out, The tunnel widened slightly, allowing me to crouch rather than crawl. The air grew colder still, the dampness intensifying. My flashlight beam reflected off something ahead, not stone, but wood. An old, warped wooden door, similar to the cabin's front door but smaller, set directly into the tunnel wall. No handle, no hinges visible on this side. Just dark, damp planks. Where the hell was I? Under the cabin? Deeper? Was this another dead end? Another trap? Hesitantly, I reached out and pushed against the wood. It felt surprisingly solid, cold and slick with moisture. It didn't budge. I pushed harder, bracing myself against the tunnel wall. Still nothing. Then I noticed them, etched faintly into the damp wood, almost invisible until the light hit them just right, were symbols. Not the spiral patterns from the west wing door, but simpler, cruder markings. Lines, circles, stick figure-like representations. One looked disturbingly like one of the screaming wooden figures from the cabinet. Another resembled a skeletal hand, reaching. As my light traced over the symbols, the low hum I'd been feeling seemed to intensify, vibrating through the wood of the door, up my arm. And a new sound began, faint at first, then growing clearer. Whispering, but different from the whispers in the fog. This was a single voice, female, dry and papery, seeming to come directly from the door itself. Not yours. It hissed, the sound like snakeskin over dry leaves. Echo claims. I recoiled, stumbling back against the opposite tunnel wall, dropping my phone. The flashlight beam spun wildly, plunging the passage into disorienting strobes of light and shadow before settling. Pointing back down the tunnel I just crawled through. The door remained shrouded in darkness. Stone, bone alone. The whisper continued, closer now, seeming to emanate from the darkness where the door stood. My heart hammered against my ribs. Scrabbling on the damp floor, I retrieved my phone, the light thankfully still working. I shone it back towards the door. It stood as before, dark, silent, the symbols barely visible. Had I imagined the voice? Was the stress finally breaking me? Then, my light caught movement on the door. One of the crudely etched symbols of the skeletal reaching hand was moving. The lines seemed to writhe, darkening, deepening, extending tendrils across the wood grain like ink spreading on wet paper. The whispering intensified, becoming a sibilant chant. Door must stay closed. Echo must feed. This wasn't just a door. It was a ward, a seal. And whatever it was holding back, it was connected to the etchings, connected to the whispers, connected to the echoes. Just as I registered this, a tremendous boom echoed from behind the wooden door, shaking the entire passage. It wasn't an explosion, more like something immense and heavy being dropped, or perhaps landing. A deep, guttural roar followed, filled with rage and pain, muffled but powerful enough to make the stone around me vibrate. Whatever was sealed behind that door, it was awake, and it was furious. The etched hand on the door pulsed with a faint, dark light. The whispers became frantic, desperate. Must hold, must contain. Another boom, closer this time, shaking dust and pebbles from the tunnel ceiling. The wooden door shuddered visibly, warping slightly under the unseen assault. It wouldn't hold for long. I had stumbled out of the frying pan of the cabin and into the fire of whatever lay beneath. The tunnel vibrated with each thunderous impact against the wooden door. Boom! Splinters flew inwards, embedding themselves in the damp earth floor near my feet. Boom! The wood groaned, bowing visibly, the crude symbols etched upon it glowing erratically, pulsing with a weak, dark energy that seemed to be failing. The frantic whispers from the door intensified, overlapping into a desperate, sibilant wall of sound. Cannot hold, unbound, hunger, trapped. The way back up led to the horrors of the cabin, the skeletal limbs, the face in the ceiling, the chilling certainty that the old man was dead or worse. Ahead, an ancient seal was breaking, about to unleash something described only by its rage and hunger. My flashlight beam darted frantically around the small, leveled section of the tunnel. Stone walls slick with moisture, packed earth floor, the shuddering wooden door. No other exits, no crevices to hide in. Then my light caught something else, something I hadn't noticed in my initial panic. Opposite the wooden door, partially obscured by a curve in the tunnel wall, was another etching. Not on wood, but carved directly into the stone. It wasn't like the crude symbols on the door. This was intricate, complex, a large, circular design filled with interlocking spirals, geometric shapes, and lines that seemed to depict constellations I didn't recognize. In the center of the circle, a single deep indentation, roughly the size and shape of a human handprint, was carved into the rock. It looked impossibly ancient, worn smooth by time or touch. Boom! Crack. The wooden door splintered violently, a large crack appearing down its center. The dark energy pulsing from the etched symbols flickered, dimmed. The whispers faltered, dissolving into pathetic, airy sighs. Whatever seal it represented was almost gone. The creature behind the door roared again, a sound of triumph this time, shaking the very foundations of the tunnel. Desperation clawed at me, the stone carving, the handprint. Was it another ward, a locking mechanism, or something else entirely? With the door about to give way, instinct took over. Scrambling across the few feet of tunnel floor, I reached the stone carving. The low hum I'd felt earlier was stronger here, emanating directly from the rock, vibrating up my arm as I touched the edge of the circle. Without thinking, driven by sheer survival instinct, I slammed my right palm, the one still raw and scraped from crawling, into the hand-shaped indentation. Pain, white-hot and electric, shot up my arm, jolting my entire body. It wasn't just the physical sensation. It felt like pouring my very essence, my fear, my memories, into the cold stone. The circular carving flared with a blinding, blue-white light, illuminating the entire tunnel in stark, momentary brilliance. The humming intensified into a deafening, resonant VROM, like a massive turbine spinning up. Simultaneously, the wooden door exploded inwards, blasted into 1,000 pieces by the final, furious assault from within. But instead of a monstrous creature lunging out, the light from the carving revealed only an empty, cavernous space beyond the doorway, vast, dark, and filled with the low, resonant hum. And standing just inside that space, momentarily silhouetted against the blinding light before it faded, wasn't a beast. It was the old man from the cabin, but not the frail, terrified figure I'd left behind. He stood tall, imposing, his cloudy eyes now burning with the same blue-white energy that pulsed from the carving. His wrinkles seemed shallower, his frame less stooped. He held his gnarled staff, not across his lap, but raised, its tip glowing with the same energy. And he wasn't looking at me. He was staring past me, down the tunnel towards the entrance I'd crawled through, his expression one of grim determination. The light from the carving faded, plunging the tunnel back into near darkness, save for my wavering flashlight beam and the faint residual glow from the old man's staff. The resonant hum subsided, replaced by a tense silence. What just happened? I choked out, my hand still pressed against the now cool stone, my arm throbbing. Balance. The old man's voice echoed, stronger now, deeper, imbued with an unnatural resonance. He turned his glowing eyes towards me. You activated the conduit, called the keeper. He gestured towards himself with the staff. Woke me. Keeper? Conduit. My mind struggled to grasp the shift. But the creature, the banging, illusions, the keeper stated flatly. Echoes given form by the hollow's hunger, amplified by your fear. Desperate attempts to breach the seal from without, not within. He stepped out of the space behind the shattered door, revealing it to be not a vast cavern, but simply a small, stone-lined alcove, now empty save for swirling dust motes. This place, he tapped the stone carving with his staff, is a failsafe, a focal point. You anchored yourself to it momentarily. Before I could ask more, a sound echoed from the tunnel entrance above. A frantic scrabbling, accompanied by wet, clicking noises. The keeper's head snapped up, his glowing eyes fixed on the darkness leading back towards the cabin. It comes, he whispered, his voice grim. The echo you strengthened. It smelled your fear. It followed you down. The skeletal limbs from the attic. They hadn't given up. They were coming down the passage after me. The frantic scrabbling echoed down the narrow passage, growing rapidly louder, closer. It wasn't just one set of limbs. It sounded like multiple, a sickening clatter of dry bone and sharp claws against stone, accompanied by those wet, clicking sounds that sent shivers down my spine. The air grew perceptibly colder, carrying the stench of grave dirt and decay that I remembered from the cabin's ceiling. What is it? I gasped, instinctively backing away, pressing myself against the stone carving, my hand still tingling strangely from activating the conduit. The attic echo, the keeper stated, his voice grim, the blue-white light in his eyes pulsing faintly. He raised his glowing staff, its light pushing back the oppressive darkness of the tunnel, revealing the path I descended. An amalgamation, fragments of those the hollow has digested, given shape by lingering torment. He looked at me, his ancient eyes filled with a weary understanding. It sensed your own fragmented memories, your fear. You drew it down. Me, the accusation stung even amidst the terror. I was just trying to survive. Survival often stirs the echoes, the keeper replied, his gaze fixed on the approaching darkness. Fear is their sustenance. The scrabbling was terrifyingly close now. My flashlight beam, pointed up the tunnel, caught the first glimpse of movement. A skeletal hand, impossibly long and thin, hooked claws digging into the stone, pulled a grotesque shape into view. It was worse than I'd seen in the cabin. Not just limbs, but a nightmarish fusion of bone, desiccated flesh, and matted hair, vaguely humanoid but hideously distorted. Multiple limbs scrabbled for purchase, pulling the central mass forward. The screaming, silent face I'd seen wedged in the ceiling beams was now mounted on the front, its jaw unhinged, dark fluid still weeping from its empty sockets, and nestled within its fractured ribcage, pulsing with a faint, malevolent red light, was something that looked disturbingly like a withered, blackened heart. It saw us. The head snapped towards the light of the keeper's staff, letting out a high-pitched, clicking shriek that grated against my teeth. It moved faster now, lunging down the tunnel with unnatural speed. Behind me, the keeper commanded, stepping forward, staff held defensively. The blue-white light flared brighter, casting stark shadows. The attic echo hesitated for a fraction of a second, recoiling slightly from the staff's glow, before shrieking again and lunging forward, skeletal claws outstretched. The keeper met the charge, thrusting the glowing tip of his staff into the creature's chest, aiming for the pulsing red heart. There was a sickening hiss, like water hitting hot metal. Black smoke erupted where the staff made contact. The echo shrieked in agony, flailing violently, its claws raking uselessly against the staff's shaft. But it didn't disintegrate, didn't retreat. It pushed forward, its unhinged jaw snapping inches from the keeper's face, its remaining limbs scrabbling, trying to encircle him. "The conduit," the keeper grunted, struggling against the creature's surprising strength. "Your hand. Anchor it. Draw its focus." My mind raced. He wanted me to touch the handprint carving again, to become a beacon for this monstrosity. Felt like suicide. But the keeper was losing ground, the echo's claws beginning to tear at his rough clothing. Swallowing my fear, I turned back to the circular carving on the wall, placed my trembling hand back into the smooth, hand-shaped indentation. This time, there was no jolt of pain, just an immediate, intense connection. The carving flared again with blue-white light, brighter than before. The resonant hum filled the tunnel, vibrating through my bones. The attic echo instantly reacted. Its head snapped towards me, the pulsing red heart in its chest flaring. It released the keeper, letting out a low, hungry growl, and began scuttling across the tunnel floor directly towards me. Drawn by the conduit's energy, its empty sockets fixed on my light, the keeper stumbled back, breathing heavily, the tip of his staff flickering. "Foolish boy," he gasped. "Not like that. You've made yourself the lure." The echo lunged, skeletal fingers reaching, its gaping maw snapping, the stench of decay overwhelming. "Okay, here is part 9 of the Whispering Fog of Hemlock Hollow. The Whispering Fog of Hemlock Hollow Part 9. There was no time to think, only react. The attic echo lunged, a blur of desiccated flesh and scrabbling bone, its gaping maw snapping shut inches from my face. I threw myself backwards, pulling my hand instinctively from the glowing conduit carving. The blue-white light immediately died, plunging the tunnel back into near darkness, illuminated only by my dropped phone's wavering beam and the faint, flickering glow from the keeper's staff. My sudden movement, coupled with the abrupt cessation of the conduit's lure, seemed to momentarily confuse the echo. It landed where I had been a second before, its skeletal claws scraping uselessly against the stone wall where the carving pulsed no more. It let out a frustrated, clicking hiss, its head whipping around, the empty sockets searching the gloom. "Stay back!" the keeper shouted, stepping between me and the creature. He thrust his staff forward again, its tip flaring with renewed, though weaker, blue-white light. The echo recoiled slightly but didn't retreat. It seemed less intimidated by the light now, its focus shifting, recognizing the keeper as an obstacle. "It's anchored to you now, boy," the keeper grunted, struggling to hold the creature at bay as it began to probe his defenses, testing the reach of the staff's light with its long skeletal fingers. "The conduit. It forms a temporary tether when activated by an untainted soul. It thinks you belong here now. Belong here, tethered? My mind reeled. Had touching the carving bound me to this place? To this creature? Was I now destined to become another echo, another fragment absorbed by the hollow? The echo lunged again, faster this time, batting the glowing staff aside with surprising force. The keeper stumbled back, the light flickering dangerously. Before the creature could press its advantage, I acted on pure, adrenaline-fueled instinct. I still held the tarnished silver locket I'd found in the hearth, the one with my own childhood photo inside. Without knowing why, I flung it as hard as I could at the echo, aiming for the pulsating red heart visible within its ribcage. The locket struck true. There was no explosion, no flash of light. But the moment the silver made contact with the echo's core, the creature screamed. Not a shriek of rage or pain, but a sound of utter, soul-wrenching agony, high-pitched and wavering, like tearing silk. It convulsed violently, its form flickering, destabilizing, the desiccated flesh seeming to dissolve into gray mist before snapping back into solidity. The red heart pulsed erratically, dimming significantly. Silver, memories, fragments left behind. Was that the key? The echo staggered back, clutching its chest with multiple skeletal hands, its empty sockets fixed on me with newfound hatred. The whispers emanating from it became sharp, focused, venomous curses directed solely at me. The locket! The keeper gasped, regaining his footing, his eyes wide as he stared at the small silver heart now lying on the tunnel floor near the writhing echo. An anchor, a memory. You disrupted its core. He raised his staff again, its light burning brighter, steadier. Now, while it's weakened, he advanced, chanting words in a language I didn't recognize. Guttural, ancient, filled with sharp consonants and resonant vowels. The blue-white light from his staff intensified, enveloping the writhing echo. The creature shrieked again, its form dissolving rapidly, the gray mist swirling, condensing, being drawn inexorably towards the glowing tip of the staff like smoke sucked into a vacuum. The red heart flared one last time, then imploded with a soft pop, leaving only swirling gray motes that were absorbed into the staff's light. Within seconds, it was over. The attic echo was gone. The tunnel was silent, save for our ragged breathing and the distant, incessant trickle of water. The keeper lowered his staff, the intense light fading back to a soft glow. He leaned heavily against the tunnel wall, looking ancient and profoundly weary. "Is it gone?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Contained," the keeper corrected, tapping the tip of his staff, where a faint gray mist seemed to swirl within the captured light. "Reabsorbed, for now. Echoes cannot be destroyed, only quieted, regulated." He looked at me, his expression unreadable. Silver, and a strong personal memory, an anchor from the outside world. An interesting development, dangerous, but effective. He straightened up, his gaze hardening. "But the tether remains, boy. You touched the conduit. Part of you is now resonant with this place. The hollow knows you. It will not easily let you go." He pointed his staff back up the dark tunnel towards the cabin. "And they will sense it too. They? The other keepers," he whispered, his voice dropping, fear flickering again in his ancient eyes. "Or those who think they are. Those who seek to use the hollow, not contain it. They will be drawn to the disruption. Drawn to you." He pushed himself off the wall. "We must leave this passage. Now, before they arrive." "Leave? back up towards the cabin where the old man likely lay dead, where the ceiling had collapsed, where those whispers originated. It felt like jumping from the fire back into the frying pan. But the keeper's urgency, the raw fear in his ancient eyes when he mentioned other keepers, was undeniable, and the thought of being trapped down here, tethered to this place, waiting for whatever else might crawl out of the shadows. "Where do we go?" I asked, scrambling to my feet, my legs shaky, my hand instinctively going to the cool stone where the handprint carving lay dormant. "Up," the keeper rasped, already moving towards the narrow passage I'd entered through. "Quickly. Speed is essential now. Stealth even more so." His staff cast a flickering blue-white light, pushing back the oppressive darkness. "They will sense the conduit's activation, the echo's containment. They will come to investigate the imbalance." We moved as fast as we could back up the sloping tunnel, the keeper surprisingly agile despite his apparent age. The climb was arduous, my scraped hands and knees protesting, the lingering scent of decay seeming to cling to the very air. The tunnel felt different now, no longer just a passage, but a scar, a place where realities had briefly, violently overlapped. "Who are these other keepers?" I panted, struggling to keep pace. "Are they like you?" "No." The keeper's voice echoed back, tight with strain. "I regulate, contain, as my predecessors did. Others, they seek to harness, to control, to feed the hollow." He glanced back, his glowing eyes narrowed. "They twist the purpose, corrupt the balance. They see conduits like you not as anchors, but as gateways, to be exploited." "Gateways?" My stomach churned. "Exploited how?" Before I could ask, we reached the top of the passage, emerging back into the cold hearth of the cabin. The scene was worse than I remembered. The pile of bones and wooden figures lay scattered where it had fallen. The gaping hole in the ceiling revealed only darkness above. No sign of the attic space, just an unnatural void. And the old man, he lay crumpled near his overturned stool, limbs twisted at impossible angles, his cloudy eyes wide, fixed on the hole in the ceiling in a rictus of ultimate terror. His staff lay splintered beside him. The echo had gotten him. The keeper paused only for a moment, his gaze sweeping over the devastation, his expression grim. He touched the tip of his glowing staff to his predecessor's forehead, murmuring ancient words under his breath. The body didn't move, but the air around it seemed to shimmer slightly, settling. "Finality. We cannot linger," the keeper urged, turning towards the front door. "They may already be near." He approached the door, the one that had sealed me in earlier. Placing his free hand flat against the wood, he closed his eyes. The staff's light pulsed. Faintly, symbols began to glow on the door's surface, not the crude etchings, but the intricate spiral patterns I'd seen on the west wing door and the stone carving below. They flared with blue-white light for a moment, then faded. With a soft click, the door swung inward silently. Outside, the world was a sea of gray. The fog was thicker than ever, pressing right up against the cabin walls, visibility near zero. The whispering was back, louder now, swirling around the cabin, filled with a sibilant, hungry anticipation. "They mask their approach," the keeper muttered, peering out into the impenetrable mist. "Clever." He looked back at me. "Stay close and silent. Your resonance. It will draw them like moths to a flame if you are not careful." He stepped out into the fog, staff held high, its glow cutting a weak, diffuse circle in the oppressive gray. Hesitantly, I followed, pulling the cabin door shut behind me, the click echoing unnervingly. We stood in the small clearing, enveloped by the whispering mist. Which way to go? There were no landmarks, no sense of direction. The keeper closed his eyes again, staff held aloft, seeming to sense something beyond sight. "This way," he finally said, pointing towards what I vaguely remembered as the direction I'd approached from. "There is a thinning, a place where the hollow's grip weakens slightly. If we can reach it before they find us." We moved into the fog, the keeper leading, his staff's light our only guide. The whispers swirled around us, growing louder, more distinct, sharp fragments of words piercing the gray. Lost, found, keeper, gateway, hunger. The feeling of being watched intensified, pressing in from all sides. It felt like the fog itself was alive, aware, studying us. Suddenly, the keeper stopped, raising his staff, the light flaring. "Wait," he hissed. From somewhere nearby in the impenetrable gray came a new sound. Not whispering, not footsteps, a low, rhythmic chanting. Multiple voices, deep and guttural, weaving a complex, hypnotic pattern. It seemed to vibrate in the very air, making my teeth ache. "They're here," the keeper breathed, his voice tight with dread. "They've begun the summoning." The chanting wasn't just sound. It felt physical, a low-frequency vibration that resonated in my chest, making the fog itself seem to pulse rhythmically. It was a complex harmony of guttural tones, rising and falling in hypnotic waves, speaking of power and ancient, dark intent. The whispers that had previously swirled around us now seemed to recoil, drawing back slightly as if in deference or fear of the ritualistic sound. "Summoning?" I whispered, huddling closer to the keeper. His staff's faint blue-white glow our only tiny island in the oppressive gray. "Summoning what?" "Reinforcements," the keeper rasped, his eyes, still glowing faintly, scanning the impenetrable fog, or perhaps attempting to directly draw upon the hollow's core, to breach the thinning from their side. "Either way, we are out of time." He gripped his staff tighter. "The ritual amplifies their senses within the fog. They will pinpoint your resonance soon." My resonance, the tether formed by touching the conduit. I felt like a walking bullseye. "Can we fight them?" He gave a short, harsh laugh. "Boy, I am old. My strength is in regulation, in balance, not open conflict." And they embrace the imbalance. They draw power from the chaos you felt below. There are likely several of them. We run. Now. He grabbed my arm, not forcefully like the gaunt man at the manor, but with a surprising strength, pulling me forward again, deeper into the fog, angling away from the direction of the chanting. We moved quickly but cautiously, stumbling over unseen roots and slick patches of moss. The chanting seemed to follow us, omnipresent, echoing from all directions now, making it impossible to gauge distance or location. Suddenly, the ground dipped sharply. We half slid, half tumbled down a short, steep embankment, landing in a tangle at the bottom of what felt like a dry creek bed. The fog was even thicker down here, colder, smelling strongly of wet stone and decay. "Stay down," the keeper hissed, pulling me flat against the damp earth. The chanting abruptly stopped. Silence slammed back down, heavy, expectant. Then, from directly above us, on the ridge we just slid down, came a new sound. A soft, wet thud, followed by another, and another, Something was landing, dropping silently from the fog-shrouded trees above. The keeper held his staff low, its light barely illuminating the ground around us. He pointed upwards with a trembling finger. Peering through the swirling gray, I saw them, figures, 3 of them, crouched on the ridge line like gargoyles, barely visible through the mist. They were humanoid but distorted, limbs too long, joints bending at unnatural angles. Draped in dark, tattered robes that seemed to meld with the fog itself. Their faces were obscured by deep hoods, but I could feel their collective gaze fixed upon us. They weren't chanting now. They were watching, waiting. One of them raised a long, spindly arm, pointing directly at me. A low, guttural voice echoed, seemingly from all 3 figures at once, overlapping, dissonant. Conduit, resonant, gateway. They see you, the keeper breathed, his voice barely a whisper. The ritual focused them. Before we could react, the figures leapt, not jumping, but launching themselves from the ridge with impossible speed and silence, gliding down through the fog towards us like enormous, predatory insects. "Run!" the keeper yelled, shoving me forward along the creek bed. "Follow the stream bed, downhill. It should lead towards the thinning." We scrambled along the uneven, rocky bottom of the dry creek, stones rolling underfoot. Behind us, I heard the soft, wet thuds as the figures landed where we had been moments before. Then, the sound of rapid, unnerving movement, a skittering, multi-limbed gait, closing the distance fast. The creek bed twisted, turned. Branches whipped at my face as we pushed through overgrown sections. My lungs burned, panic clawing at my throat. The skittering was right behind us now. I risked a glance over my shoulder. One of them was almost upon us. A hooded face turned towards me, and for a split second, the shadows within the hood shifted. I saw not a face, but a swirling mass of gray mist, punctuated by 2 burning points of red light, identical to the embers that had ignited in Casey's button eyes. These weren't just cultists. They were something else. Something corrupted, empowered by the hollow itself. Its impossibly long arm shot out, spindly fingers tipped with black, talon-like nails reaching for my ankle. The black talons scraped against my boot heel as I desperately scrambled forward, falling onto the slick creek stones. Before the creature could strike again, the keeper was there, slamming the butt of his glowing staff down hard onto the reaching arm. There was a sickening crack of dry bone, and the figure let out a piercing shriek, retracting its mangled limb. "Move!" the keeper roared, grabbing my shirt and hauling me to my feet. Downstream, the thinning is close. We plunged back into the disorienting gray, the sounds of the 3 pursuing figures, skittering, hissing, their dissonant voices chanting gateway, conduit, echoing terrifyingly close behind us. The creek bed offered treacherous footing, and the oppressive fog seemed to actively resist our passage, swirling, thickening, trying to disorient us. Then, gradually, I felt a shift. The fog, while still present, began to feel less absolute, less heavy. The whispers seemed fainter, less focused. The unnerving pressure lessened slightly. Ahead, through the thinning gray, I could make out shapes, trees, rocks with slightly more clarity. "Almost there," the keeper gasped, his breath ragged, the glow from his staff flickering noticeably weaker. "Just beyond this bend." We rounded a sharp turn in the creek bed, and the change became undeniable. The fog was noticeably less dense here, swirling in patches rather than a solid wall. Sounds were clearer. I could hear the distinct trickle of water nearby, the rustle of wind in unseen branches above, and the oppressive feeling of being watched, while still present, felt distant, muted. We had reached the thinning, but we weren't alone. The three hooded figures emerged from the fog behind us, moving slower now, seeming almost hesitant to enter this less saturated area, their forms flickering slightly, less substantial than before. They stopped at the edge of the denser fog bank, their red eyes burning, fixed on me. "They cannot fully manifest here," the keeper explained, leaning heavily on his staff, exhaustion etched onto his ancient face. "The hollow's grip is weaker, but they can still influence, still reach." He looked at me, his own faint glow seeming to dim. "And your tether, it still connects you. They will use it to pull you back eventually, unless what?" pleaded. "Unless it is severed," he said grimly. He raised his staff, its light flaring weakly one last time. "The conduit can anchor, but it can also release. Requires sacrifice, an exchange." Before I could ask what he meant, the three figures at the edge of the fog raised their spindly arms in unison. The guttural chanting began again, louder, more forceful this time. The patches of fog within the thinning area pulsed, darkening, swirling faster. The oppressive feeling surged back, stronger than before. They were trying to extend the hollow's reach, using my resonance as a focal point. "No time," the keeper grunted. He stumbled towards me, grabbing my good arm. "Your hand, boy. The locket. Press it against the staff. Focus your memory. Your world." Confused but desperate, I did as he commanded. Pulled the tarnished silver locket from my pocket, clutched it tight, picturing my apartment, the city streets, anything but this whispering gray nightmare. Pressed the locket against the shaft of the keeper's staff, just below its glowing tip. The moment the silver touched the staff, energy surged. Blinding blue-white light erupted, pushing back the encroaching fog. The keeper cried out, his body convulsing, the light seeming to flow into him from the staff, from the locket, from me. The three figures shrieked, recoiling from the intense light, their forms flickering violently. "Sever the echo," the keeper gasped, his voice distorted, ancient, powerful. "Balance demands price." I felt a violent snap deep within me, like a cord being cut. The feeling of being tethered, of resonating with the hollow, vanished abruptly. Simultaneously, the light exploded outwards in a final, blinding pulse. When my vision cleared, I was lying on damp earth, alone. The fog was gone. Bright, clear afternoon sunlight streamed through the trees. Birds were singing. The air smelled clean of pine and damp soil. I looked around frantically. No creek bed, no keeper, no hooded figures, just normal, quiet woods. My compass, pulled from my pocket, now pointed steadfastly north. My phone displayed no service, but the time showed it was only an hour later than when I'd first entered the fog. I stumbled to my feet, my body aching, shoulder throbbing, but functional. Pushing through the undergrowth, driven by a desperate need for confirmation, I found it the main trail, exactly where it should have been. Looking back, there was no sign of a dry creek bed, no unnaturally thick fog, just dense, unremarkable forest. Had it been real? A hallucination? A time slip? The throbbing pain in my shoulder, the lingering metallic taste in my mouth, the memory of those whispers, the chilling weight of the locket still clutched in my hand. They screamed that it was. I followed the trail back, half expecting the fog to descend again at any moment. Reached my car, untouched, drove back towards town, the familiar road signs a jarring contrast to the twisted, whispering landscape I just escaped. I never told anyone. Who would believe me? But sometimes, late at night, when the wind sighs just right through the trees outside my window, I think I hear whispers. And sometimes, looking in the mirror, I catch a fleeting glimpse of cloudy, ancient eyes staring back before my own reflection settles. The keeper's sacrifice severed the tether, allowed me to escape the hollow's physical grasp. But he was right. Some echoes never fade. The hollow knows me now, and part of me fears, deep down, that it's only a matter of time before it calls me back.